Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Big Ideas in Education. I am your host, Dr. Sarah Boulos 5 from Somerset Academy Schools, joined of course, I got a little flub there, joined of course by my co-host Ryan Kairalla of Doral College. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Sarah. Great to be chatting with you.
Great to talk to you. So let's hear what you have to talk about. I heard you have something big that's going on in our own backyard that you wanted to talk about.
Well, we love those stories that are happening in our own backyard. And this is a pretty intriguing one that I think might wind up being something we see throughout the country. So my story is about social media safety, specifically in the state of Florida. On February 7th, the Florida Senate's K-12 committee passed SB 52, a bill designed to promote student safety on social media platforms. Among other things, the bill would require school districts to prohibit student access to social media platforms through school district internet, and would also require instruction on social media safety and to make social media safety materials available online for parents. In support of the bill, Florida Senator Danny Burgess said, quote, "These kids are walking around with a live digital hand grenade, and we're not educating them on the safe use of it." Lawmakers were motivated to address the issue of social media safety amid the rise of popular platforms like TikTok. State CFO Jimmy Petronas called the bill necessary to ensure that, quote, "our students and schools remain safe from the dangers TikTok presents." So this is a pretty bold action we're seeing by the legislature here. The original version of the bill, Sarah, I researched, was just about safety materials. And then through a series of amendments, the committee added this piece about actually banning these platforms on school district internet so that the kids can't access them. So far, the bill has been fairly uncontroversial. It went through the committee unanimously. And I'll tell you, I'm torn on it because on one hand, nobody more than you and I are more acutely aware of the dangers that social media poses and the impact it can have on students. We've covered it on Big Ideas in Education. And certainly the schools can play a role in promoting responsible social media use. I am just hopeful that in the materials that we create and the way that the state goes about this, that we don't distance students away from the potential that social media has to be a force for good. I think for a lot of students, the next generation of jobs is going to be using social media. Social media marketing is often the first job that a lot of students have. And I hope that we're not going too far in terms of keeping students from accessing these materials and getting the training that they need. For example, I think of the fact that a lot of our schools, Sarah, actually have classes in social media marketing, clubs in digital marketing to learn these skills. If you are limiting access to these platforms on school district internet, what happens to those classes?
So those are great questions. So the first thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I want to be careful the way I say this because I don't want to sound as though I'm opposed to any of that. But the first thing that kind of irked me was the idea of just a flat out ban on district or school supported Wi-Fi or internet platforms. And let me be very clear why. I think that as a solution in and of itself, if not partnered with other more responsible measures that would help students and their parents in how to address certain aspects of social media, particularly open internet, I think it is very short-sighted. And the reason why I say that is, one, not only do kids have access to the internet abundantly outside of school and district Wi-Fi, they could just walk to the local library and have free internet, right? But it kind of is very short-sighted in the sense that it's platform-based. And that's a big issue I think we have when we talk about internet safety with families, with parents, with students, is that even if we were to ban, block, remove one platform, another one is going to come and take its place that is providing the fear, the danger that we thought we were protecting our children from. I'm a little far removed from the classroom, but the big issue when I was a classroom teacher was Snapchat, right? Snapchat was the big danger that we had to block from kids. That's not the fear today. Now the boogeyman is TikTok, right? And so, yes, with each of these platforms, new dangers arise. And I don't want us to minimize those dangers, but I think the approach that we take as educators and being responsible is educating ourselves on how do we, one, learn how to teach our students how to responsibly use these platforms. Two, educate parents in how to, whether it's create controls, remove certain apps, things like that, but be advocates for what the parents want their child to be exposed to when it comes to different apps. But we also have to be aware of just the danger or the availability, the prevalence of open internet access. At what age do we want to provide these options for children, knowing that if we are just sticking to a platform ban stance, we're really missing the boat, because I'm telling you, as somebody who's lived it for many years, my entire teaching career has been with social media. The moment we think we've mastered it, oh, we got them, we tackled this, another system shows up in its place. I mean, I can think of, all the obsolete apps and websites that were boogeymen when I was in the classroom, like Vine and Cinemagram and things that I don't think exist anymore.
I can definitely understand the desire through policy to try to encourage responsible social media use. You and I have seen it in the classrooms, the negative impacts that apps like Instagram or TikTok can have on students' well-being or just on their ability to stay on task, right? We don't want a bunch of students using social media when they should
and there
be
are real
on their
dangers,
assignments.
right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're clear about that. And as a person who works with kids constantly, yeah, it terrifies me that there's no way to control, that I'm aware of, what shows up on TikTok, right? You
Yeah.
can have a kid who's looking at Miss Rachel or watching something educational, and all of a sudden something completely random. I have not figured out the algorithm, right? And it's targeting all these sorts of things that are not healthy uses. So I don't want to sound as though I'm diminishing that, but
Yeah.
to be just platform based and say this platform is the problem is really not getting to the issue.
Right. And if the goal through policy is to encourage responsible use of social media, I am skeptical as to whether we can teach students to use the platform responsibly in an educational setting when we don't let them use it at all in an educational setting.
That's a good point.
I think teaching the pedagogy of effective social media, like social media can be an effective learning tool, and certainly, again, teaching students how to use social media effectively could help them in their next job later in life. And I just want, I hope that, if this bill continues to go through and we start doing rulemaking around it, that a good balance is struck so that students can still learn the skills of effective social media use rather than us just equating effective social media or responsible social media use with just banning it entirely.
Right. Because you're really shutting the door on helping them to navigate the world that we exist in. There is no way around it, right? There's no escaping it at this point. And not only would we be sheltering our students, we would actively be damaging their, existence in the world we live in and job performance possibly, or socialization. This is the world we live in. This is the way we operate and communicate as a society. So how are we going to teach them how to navigate it?
Yep. Social media is not going to play a big role in their professional life. On a completely unrelated note, you can follow us on Twitter at Academica Media with the hashtag.
Right. Yeah.
So interested in hearing your story about early childhood education, a huge passion of mine. Love to hear what you have for us.
Yeah, just last week, the U.S. took a big step in developing more teachers in this critical area of early childhood education. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, through the Administration for Children and Families, announced the launch of the new National Early Care and Education Workforce Center, the ECE Workforce Center. The ECE Workforce Center is the result of a $30 million investment to support research and technical assistance for states, communities, territories, and tribal nations to improve the recruitment and retention of a diverse and qualified workforce across early care and education programs. As of early 2020, the childcare sector lost almost 80,000 jobs, or about 7.5% of its workforce due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you probably know, many of the childcare centers that were in existence before could not reopen, could not find qualified workers. Many organizations that provide early care and education services today say it is difficult to locate skilled candidates to fill vacancies. At the same time, a significant percentage of early care and education workers, who are overwhelmingly women and often have children of their own, live in poverty. Early care and education professionals are among the lowest paid workforces in the country, despite the skills and expertise they possess to successfully support the development of young children. The new National Early Care and Education Workforce Center will help improve early care and education workforce recruitment and retention with a focus on career growth and better compensation for teachers, aides, and other caregivers, said Secretary Xavier Becerra. HHS is honored to launch this first-of-its-kind research and technical assistance center to support the essential early childhood workforce who partner with families every day to ensure young children have what they need to thrive. As many of us know, early childhood is more than just childcare. 90% of a child's brain is developed before the age of 6, meaning that early intervention and early childhood education are critical for preparing kids for success in K-12 schooling. Positive educational experiences in birth through age 6 have a lasting impact on how a child learns for the rest of their life. This ECE Workforce Center's research and technical assistance activities have the goals to work together to, 1, build a career pipeline for the early education workforce, including support for pursuing credentials and degrees while maintaining the strong diversity of the early childhood sector, and 2, identify and implement sustainable approaches to increase compensation and benefits. Providing quality educators in this sector is definitely a multifaceted issue, but I'm excited for this first step in finding solutions.
Absolutely. And as somebody who is about to enter that market for daycare for his infants, could not come soon enough.
Well, I can tell you as somebody who's living that as well, that the sad truth is that we live, and of course, listening if you're not from South Florida, but both Ryan and I live in a very high cost of living area where childcare, I should say, is extremely and sometimes prohibitively expensive. And there are shortages. I can tell you from personal experience that we have had struggles with waiting lists and finding childcare that is affordable and within a reasonable distance. I mean, it is very difficult to find, and you're listening to two people who are relatively privileged in the sense that we're very well educated and have stable jobs. I cannot imagine what this situation is like for not just the families looking for this kind of education or childcare for their families, but also for the workers, because as we mentioned in the article, they are among the lowest paid in the industry. And it is not an acceptable, it's not a living wage for these educators, and it's not an acceptable way to treat the people who are caring for our children at the most vulnerable times in their lives.
Absolutely. And particularly as we just continue to see more and more research that supports what you were talking about, Sarah, in that effective early childhood education at young ages can provide so many benefits to people throughout their life. In addition to the benefits it provides to parents to getting that additional care for their child, for the child themselves, you're talking about better academic outcomes when they enter kindergarten and beyond. And so considering
I'm going to throw something else in there that it's been on my mind because I've been visiting so many elementary schools lately, but the amount of of behavioral and social issues that we're seeing with our really young kindergartners and first graders. It's just, I can't wait for the research that I know is probably going on right now about how our COVID kids did not get these socialization experiences in traditional daycare and early preschools and all of that, that kids just a year or two ago would have had. And I just, every conversation that I have with school counselors and with elementary schools about how they're spending so much more attention and how they need to address these social issues so much more is really illuminating how vital these services are. And I hope that we take it seriously and that we really take a hard look at how do we provide for these educators and make sure that they have secure jobs, but also that we protect our early childhood centers.
Yeah, that's intriguing. I didn't even consider it from the socialization aspect. I was just considering academic
It's,
outcomes.
and I think
but
a lot of us as
socialization, wow.
educators, we talk about academic outcomes so much, but really the purpose of early childhood is not necessarily academic preparation. It's a lot of social preparation because, going back to educational theory with, Erickson, where all learning is socially constructed. So if we don't have a strong foundation of socialization, how to work with each other, cooperative learning techniques, which develop on the playground, develop when you're fighting over Legos, develop as you're finger painting, activities that, and I'll admit I'm one of them. A traditional K-12 educator may not see as a really academically challenging or rigorous task is actually so critical to brain development for young children.
Wow, that's powerful insight. I am interested in seeing what programs like this at the federal level can create in terms of local impacts in a subject area that really needs some good local impacts.
Absolutely. Well, we're so excited to have you, and we're excited to hear what your thoughts are on these subjects. Please feel free to reach out to us. As Ryan mentioned in his shameless plug earlier, you can reach us at Academica Media using the hashtag BigIdeasInEducation. We love sharing our time with you. We love sharing what we're learning, and we hope to learn more from you as well. Bye.
See ya.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.